Good morning everyone, Tater here and welcome to Tater Games. Today we are going to talk about movies that would make great games. So, grab yourself a cup of coffee and wait for all of this to blow over. So if you guys are familiar with Shaun of the Dead, he's obviously on that list. So we're going to talk about him a little bit later. I've got my list here. Every time I watch films, I always think, how would you make this into a game? And especially with the new stuff. So I've been going to a theater a lot more recently, and I've been watching quite a few new movies and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be a great chance to spread the good ideas that came out of my head. First up is a film I actually saw very recently, which was called The Great Wall, and given the film was, meh, but when I saw the soldiers and stuff like that and the costumes they were wearing, the first thing I thought of was a video game. The film is supposed to have two audiences. I mean, Matt Damon doesn't really do a great job, but there is room for actually playing one of the soldiers. Of course, the game doesn't necessarily have to be about defending the Great Wall for the Tau Fangs something. I still think it would make an amazing universe if you were to choose your role or something like that and sort of manipulate things, or even better would be a top-down RTS game RTS real-time strategy, where you kind of just control the units in their separate sort of paths, but I guess you need to add a bit more in order to create the actual strategy part, because, I mean, 4 units is a bit little. I'm talking too much about this film that had great action sequences, but the film was shit. But it may make a great game, is what I thought. Next up is a fairly obvious one, and something that we don't get too much of was The Hunger Games. Now, The Hunger Games, of course, is a very iffy film. Not many people like it, but at the same time, a lot of people like it, so yeah, and I know you guys are going to say, oh, it's basically Battle Royale, and you are correct, it is basically Battle Royale, but we have so many games that are sort of in the Battle Royale universe, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is actually a perfect example for something quite recent that just follows a very similar Battle Royale theme. When I watched The Hunger Games for the first time, I actually came home and tried to make this, of course giving up after around half an hour purely because I was just bored. I mean, obviously it will be a multiplayer game. You have different maps because The Hunger Games kind of has a more creative environment than a lot of the other games based on Battle Royale. When you look at King of the Hill, H1Z1, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, it's a very static and not very dangerous location, kind of, and it kind of works off our third-person, first-person shooters, and it's not really unique in a sort of way like that. But of course, when there are dangers everywhere, for example, the circle idea from Battlegrounds is just amazing. I love it. I haven't seen it in any other games before. I didn't really play King of the Hill. I'm not too sure if that actually has the circle-y closing down thing. But I mean, there are many ways that the sort of Hunger Games area kind of works really well in a game environment. You have dangers in different areas. Of course, if it was built a bit like Battlegrounds. Oh, and take away guns. Guns are great and all, but when you kind of want that melee sort of medieval bows, arrows, and just unique weapons that you can pick up in the very center bit, and I like the idea of something being in the center. Hey, wait a minute, there was a Minecraft adaptation of that. The Minecraft one was okay, it was actually really well made, except I do believe that there is room for improvement there. I mean, there's only so much you can play the Minecraft one. I only played it for about a few hours, and then you kind of get bored. Maybe that's a good sign that it's not going to be a great game. We shall see. Next on the list is something that I would believe would make a great game because I played the first one. Or when I say first one, I mean like the 5th or 4th movie adaptation of King Kong. Not the Peter Jackson version or any of the older ones, the sort of newer one, which was called Kong Skull Island. Now, given that the movie was kind of okay, actually, I liked it. If you think about the universe of giant creatures trawling around and you being a human, or maybe you are one of the creatures, but I just like the idea of an open world game that takes place in that sort of setting. Yes, you are stuck on an island. Yes, you cannot leave the island, which is a perfect way to keep map size down. But you can also make it very lush and very beautiful. And you can also probably have more of a survival type thing going there. Ark Survival Evolved is pretty close to what it is. And if you see how much of a great game that was, well, imagine if you had slightly different mechanics. Let's take Ark, for example. It did very well. It's a game based on giant creatures, but I found it extremely boring within the first hour of playing it. However, every time I think of, hang on, it would be great to fight giant creatures, tame giant creatures, do all of that type of stuff, but take away that survival thing and you kind of have yourself a story-driven game. I mean, when I picture it in the setting of something like Uncharted, which was awesome, let's be honest, but it was very story driven and not very free roamy, do what you want. A lot of potential there. Anyway, I'll move on to the next one. I'm talking a bit too much about single ones, and I got quite a few on this list. So the next one is Harry Potter. Now, the Harry Potter universe is something that's really cool, and yes, I know that there are games based on it, and there were games based on most of the stuff I got here. It's just they're all crap. When I say Harry Potter universe, you don't necessarily have to use the main characters and stuff like that, but who didn't want to create their own wizard? Yeah, we can sit here and play as Harry or whatever in the main storyline of blah, 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 blah. You know, it's a very boring thing to do, but if you can go out and do whatever you want in sort of a wizardy world, and let's say it's slightly more prehistoric, and when I say prehistoric, I just mean they have wands, but they're more in a free roamy, hostile environment, not Hogwarts, then it could have plenty of room there to be really cool. And I mean, as you learn stuff and progress through stuff and get more spells and stuff until you build up this arsenal of spells and coolness and, oh yes. There are so many different roles that you can take as well. I mean, if you take a look deep into the universe, there are thousands and thousands of different types of people there are. I mean, if you take stuff like, oh, Hagrid's a great one. I like Hagrid. If you can work with animals in that way and be kind of friendly towards them or whatever, and then they kind of return the favor and you can tame them in that sort of sense, or you can actually take up the magical sort of realm and fight in very different ways, you can't get better than Shaolin Soccer. And Shaolin Soccer was a film about these martial artists playing soccer. If you haven't seen it, I 100% recommend. It's a lot of fun to watch, and it's very loose and comedic and not very serious. But we've all played FIFA, we've all played Pro Evolution Soccer way back in the day. They used to be my jam. And I hate sports games, but the soccer games were so much fun. So I was thinking, what if you actually added a Kung Fu element to the soccer game? I mean, it worked with Rocket League, not with Kung Fu, but it's soccer with cars. I mean, you can't say that can work, but Kung Fu doesn't work with soccer. Everything works with soccer. Oh, sorry, for you Americans out there, football. Sorry. Getting into the gory stuff, I always thought Kill Bill would make an amazing game, but mainly because there's one scene in the first film, and it's like, oh yes, I wish I could play that, and I wish I could do that. Maybe not in real life, it's very gory, but there are a few games like that. Mortal Kombat, I'm not going to deny, gives you a bit of, ugh. Let me move on to some zombie genres, and I always thought Shaun of the Dead is probably, no, 100% my favorite zombie film ever made. And the reason why I'm saying this is because there are no zombie games that have comedic value, except for Dead Rising maybe. It came pretty close to being one of the coolest. It's just fun to do. But one of the things that they didn't do in that game was have sort of a small town that wasn't run down, because I don't really like the apocalyptic genre sort of scenario that these games often come in. I kind of like roaming around the city. And another one, of course, is that, what is that? I should have written this down, but I didn't. And it is called, come on, it's about Will Smith and his dog. Oh, I Am Legend. But the idea behind that was that the place wasn't really run down. There were cars in the street, and yes, I guess it was after a few years and stuff had started overgrowing and animals had started entering the city, which is pretty cool. I mean, The Last of Us is a very similar, but it's very apocalyptic and stuff. When the zombie outbreak happens for the first time, kind of, it would be great if you had this sort of location where you choose where you want to live. There are buildings everywhere, you can go inside them and stuff, and then choose where you want to build your base. That is something that they don't do often in games that are free roaming. They sort of give you, okay, you can build here, here, and here, but you can't build anywhere you want. Yeah, and sandbox games like Rust and Hurt World and all of that type of stuff, you can build anywhere. Or even H1Z1. You can build anywhere, but it's not really like, you kind of want to turn someone's house into a base, but you want to choose the house. Anyway, speaking of Shaun of the Dead, actually Hot Fuzz would be an amazing game, but again, it's because of the city environment or the town environment, countryside environment, that if you had free roaming stuff in places like that, like Red Dead Redemption, oh my god, perfect game there. If you had that in the style of Hot Fuzz and it's sort of like a hostile modern town, I mean, it doesn't exist and it doesn't have to be particularly true. Actually, the new Far Cry game might be quite similar. Actually, scratch that one last. They might do a very good job of it. I know it's Britain and America, it's different. Oh yes, this one grinds my gears because the movie was shit. Can I say shit on YouTube? Especially if you're a fan of the anime, especially if you're a fan of all of that. But they haven't really come up with a good Avatar game. They did have a Korra game, which I loved 100%. The sort of bending tournament things that they had were just no. But it looked the part of what you kind of wanted the games to be like. However, again, I still believe that choosing your side is always a must in games. It's always nice to have the choice of who you play as or who you belong to, and you get the descriptions in the start. Role-playing games are a perfect example. You kind of craft your own character. Playing as Korra is fun, yes, but it would be great if you could learn a bit more in depth about what you want to learn. And again, a free roaming thing would be very cool, but in the first Avatar universe, not necessarily the second one, which was great, I'm not going to lie, but the first one had the sort of tribes and they were all kind of separated rather than mingled up together. It would work having that hostility between every tribe or faction, or differences between the Benders and even the Muggles. Wrong word. Another one that does have a game but I didn't particularly like was Saw. They had a game for Saw 2. Now, the game was, I guess, okay. I mean, it was very puzzly and stuff, but you played as the person within the traps. Who wants to do that? Who wants to try and get out of a bloody location? You know how you have all those tycoon games? Roller Coaster Tycoon, Zoo Tycoon, Prison Tycoon? Is that one? Well, the idea behind it was I really want to be the person who creates the traps and creates the rooms and creates the puzzles, but they don't have a game like that, especially not in that gory sense. I mean, if you put the word tycoon, what is it, Torture Tycoon? That wouldn't sell. Just put PG-13 on there and let the kids play. What an amazing game. Actually, that's probably my favorite on the list, creating a tycoon game for a Saw franchise. My god, I'm going to be pegged as a sadist. That's all the stuff I've written. I'm sure there's a million more that I can think of, but I was just doing this video really quickly. Sorry, Mike. Hopefully all of you guys enjoyed this video. You guys can go and be productive now and make some good stuff. And if you run out of ideas, always look towards other stuff. Music, movies, of course. Even other games are great inspiration for stuff that you guys can get ideas from. And you don't necessarily have to make a genre that already exists. You can go way out there and maybe it would become a genre one day. Anyway, I'm going to finish this coffee and I will see you all tomorrow where I owe everyone an apology. See you then.